Hello and welcome to this Against the Storm introductory tutorial. To kick off this series, I want to go over some of the general features, mechanics, and other aspects of the game, as well as talk about my plans for the series as a whole. As of this recording, many of the tutorials are still in the state they were in when I originally recorded them around the Steam Early Access release approximately a year ago. I have plans to update most of them. A few of them at least will not need updated, but I have only re-recorded some. I also have plans to add at least 3 more to the series in the coming days or weeks. Against the Storm is a dark fantasy builder with a wide variety of roguelike elements to it. That means that progression through the game is done through a meta system on a world map, and then the individual game levels, or towns or settlements in this case, are played kind of almost separate from the metagame, but they influence and provide your resources for the metagame. In this game, we play as the Queen's Viceroy, a leader that's sent out to establish new settlements in a world that is plagued by rain most of the time. There are some evil spirits, some benign spirits, and some very angry forests. We're going to lead a group of humans, beavers, lizards, harpies, and/or foxes into the wilderness to found and establish those settlements and towns that can then be used for later trading. The developer of this game is Eremite Games and is published by Hooded Horse. Eremite Games is a group of 5 or so people, or started out as such, who have a large amount of experience working at AAA developers. They've used a very agile style development process throughout the early access period, to the point where they released updates every 2 weeks like clockwork. Now that the game is released, the update schedule will no longer be necessary, but they do have plans to continue developing and expanding the game. Their development process was also very community-centered. Many of the features and changes to the game were directly inspired by community feedback. Before you move on to the tutorials on the specific gameplay features of the game, I'd like to take the time to orient you to some of the basic parts of the game, just to give you a feel of how the game works and feels. Here on the main menu, you have a list of profiles. There are at least 5 available. I don't know if you can go beyond that point or not. I have one that I played through during the Epic Games Store exclusive early access period. Then I started a new save for the Steam Early Access launch. I also have a test game here that I've used to develop some of the tutorials that I've updated so far. Finally, I also have started a new save for the 1.0 release. I've been playing this game fairly extensively for the last 2+ years, so there's a lot of progression in each of these saves. Each save is completely standalone in the meta progression, so switching between them is like playing a different game, or at least playing the game at different points. In addition to switching between them by selecting, you can reset the progress by choosing the broom, and you can delete the profile with the trash can there, and you can rename it by clicking on the name here. There's a giant play button here in the center, which we will return to, plus a settings button and a quit button. A link to the Discord server here at the bottom, and there may or may not still be news here at the top. During early access, it was there, and also during early access, there was a date shown when the next update will be available, because of that 2-week cycle, which was essential since you would at least be force completed in your current settlement when the update released. If not, have the world map reset completely. Now that we are at 1.0, and the version upgrades will be less frequent, that shouldn't be as big of a concern. However, I greatly suspect they will give us ample warning, probably here on the screen someplace, about a pending update and what it will affect. In the options menu, we have a wide variety of settings. Under General and Video are probably mostly settings you would be familiar with from most other games. World Map Grid is one that you may or may not want to turn on. I mentioned that during a couple of the tutorials, as well as the beginning of the Let's Play series. And things like complex effects, lightning flashes, and motion blur may be things that you want to disable depending on if you have sensitivity on those types of features. Sound, of course, and some general control options. Now, of course, key bindings are also controls, but they are here as a separate tab, and you can also look through this to find the different things that you can bind to shortcut keys to make your gameplay a little bit easier. Under gameplay are a lot of various options, many of which I touch upon in one or more of the tutorials in this series, as they affect the different parts of gameplay. Some of them affect the way that you start a town, some of them affect how the town operates, and some of them are just options for how you want to play the game. Especially these auto pause settings that allow you to automatically pause the game as you reach a specific type of event in the gameplay. This is very useful because some events have adverse effects that trigger at the start of that event or when that event happens, and so you may want to pause so that you can process through some sort of changes in your save, in your town, before you proceed further. So the pause is very useful in those types of ways. What types of things also, it's just kind of related to gameplay, but what types of things alert you to them happening? Whether you want those to appear on your game, in your game screen or not. You can turn those on and off. And then finally, if you are a Twitch streamer, or if you know a Twitch streamer who's playing this game, they can integrate the game with Twitch and then have some interactivity in the chat with the game. Including, but not limited to, having the playable characters named after chatters in your Twitch chat. The options menu is also available via the escape menu once you're in the game, which I will show you in just a moment after we click the big play button. Here in the world map interface, you have quite a bit, but before we go into that, I want to just show the escape menu real quick. The options will take you into that same options screen. The encyclopedia will take you to an in-game guide of showing you brief summaries, and sometimes not so brief summaries, about different aspects of the game here on the Help tab. Descriptions and functionality of every building in the game, which is expanded upon as buildings are unlocked through different means in the game. Cornerstones operate the same way as buildings in that it starts out with a list of the ones you have unlocked to begin with, and then as you progress through the game, you unlock more things. More of them will unlock here. Traders, a description about each of the possible traders that can come to your town, and then each of the playable species that are available in the game. So if you have questions or need information about how different things work in the game, this is a great way to find out how to get to those things. We also have ability to provide feedback to the developers here and to request a feature, and then of course to save and quit, which takes you back out to the main menu. We'll continue though, because we are going to work here on the world map screen. In the world map interface, you have just a handful of things to kind of focus on. Up here are your Citadel resources. You accumulate those by playing through various settlements. We'll go into those more in detail in the world map tutorial, as well as the Smoldering City tutorial. Access to the Smoldering City is available here, as is the Daily Expedition and Training Expedition once you have those unlocked in the game. Each of these has or will have a tutorial in this series. You also have seal fragments over here, which are related to the seal component of the game, and those we will go into when we talk about seals. Finally, the escape menu is also available via a button here in the corner. The main part of the screen is the world map itself. If you'd like to see those grid lines, you can turn on in the setting. You can see the tiles very differently when that setting is turned on versus when it is turned off. Some people like them on, some people do not, and the great thing is it's completely up to you. Since the world map looks a bit like a physical game board in my opinion, you may want the grid on if you like the more game boardy feel. Down here you have your Blightstorm timeline. Every town you complete will appear here, spaced away from the previous depending on how long you spent in that town. Once you get to the end, or beyond this symbol here, you have to allow the Blightstorm to pass before you go out again. This can optionally include the closing of a seal, which again we will talk about more in the Seals tutorial. Once you do that, all towns on the map are reset, and you start again from the beginning as this map is right now. Once on the map here and there, you will also see question marks. These indicate points of interest out in the world. The colors of the map here are related to the different biomes, which I cover in the biomes tutorial as well as others. Next, we will take a look at the interface inside of a town. Inside of a town, there are several interface elements, most of which will be covered more in depth as the tutorial series progresses. Over here, you have all three, or in this case 2, of the selected species. The number of species is always limited to 3, regardless of how many species you have unlocked in the game. You can only take 3 different species with you to an individual town. The species panels have this pull-out menu, where you can see some aspects of them, their needs, and their satisfaction. Across the top here, you have menus for all the items in the game that you can harvest from trees, pick up off the ground, and manufacture. These menus only show the items that have been discovered in this town. As more are discovered, they will be added, and that may even include adding more menus as well. Here in the center is your main clock. This tells you what year you're in. This tells you what season you're in. This is your hostility. Hostility is covered in depth in a later tutorial. And then your game speed here. Across here, you have your forest mysteries. These are also covered in depth in another tutorial. Over here is your trade routes, your recipes panel, and your consumption control panel, as well as again the main menu button. There are additional buttons that will appear here throughout the game for things like cornerstones and orders. Each of these screens has or will have a dedicated tutorial as well. Down here on the bottom, you have your current reputation, in this case it is 0, and your current Queen's Patience, also 0. The reputation button is clickable to allow you to pick a new building from the blueprints as a reward. You start every game with 3 blueprint choices, and you proceed from there. This is your build menu across this area, then marking and unmarking trees, and building destruction. All screens in this game kind of look like this one. They all have different aspects to them, but they have a consistent look and feel. A pop-up screen with some sort of choices. You can see this one here is kind of similar to the other one. And these screen here for orders, trading post, trade routes, recipes, and consumption allow you to toggle between the 5 of them once they are available, so that if you would like to switch back and forth without going out and clicking another button, you're able to do that. All these screens will be covered, as I mentioned, in more depth in future tutorials. As you can tell from that quick overview of each main segment of the game, I plan to cover every aspect of the game in tutorials. If I miss one, or don't go into enough detail on one, please let me know in the comments for that video, or join me on Discord, the link is below in the description, and discuss the game with me there. The length of these tutorials will be variable, but fairly short. This one perhaps being one of the longest. Some of them may be very short at only a couple minutes, if that is all it takes to cover the topic, whereas other things may be more logically grouped together for these tutorials. I'll be using different saves, at least probably 3 different saves, to demonstrate the game's aspects at various stages of progression. There will be a lot of overlap between the tutorials, which is just kind of naturally occurring, because a lot of the aspects of the game work together. That is, one affects the other, or 2 come together to affect a third. And I plan on talking about the overlap when it happens, so that you know which of the systems within the game have a relationship. And of course, as I mentioned, by all means provide suggestions if there's an aspect of the game that I did not cover in the tutorial series. As I mentioned at the beginning, updates to existing tutorials, as well as the additional tutorials, will be coming over the next days and weeks. It will just take me a while to go through all of the existing tutorials to find those that need updated and then record the updated video, as well as plan out and record the new tutorials I have planned. I want to thank you all for joining me for this extended but still brief, introduction into Against the Storm. I hope you come to enjoy this game as much as I do, especially those of you who are just getting exposed to it with the 1.0 release and the inclusion in Game Pass. In addition to this tutorial series, I will also be starting the game over with a fresh save in a new Let's Play series. In my existing Let's Play series have a ton of useful information on how to get started, make good and bad decisions, and understand everything within the game. The beginning of the Steam release series has a very thorough walkthrough of 1 to 2 towns that is still very much valid compared to the 1.0 version of the game. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the coming tutorials and in the coming Let's Play series. Bye for now.